The Fourth Stall, Chapter 21. At lunch that day, I broke a school rule that came with a mandatory 3-day in-school suspension if caught, but I didn't care. This was bigger than the suspension now, probably always had been, if my hunch was right, and I needed to know immediately if I was right. I just hoped I was wrong. I had Joe close up the office, and then I snuck around to the front of the school and got my bike. Joe arranged for distraction to keep the RS on the other side of the school until I could get clear. I stayed low and walked my bike to the edge of the parking lot, and then I was off. I pedaled towards my home as fast as I could. My butt never even touched the seat, and I made the usual 7-minute bike ride in 3 minutes. My mom's car was not in the garage. She must have had to work. Her work schedule was pretty irregular, so I never knew if she did or didn't work, when she did or didn't work. The front and side doors were locked, and I didn't have my key. In my haste, I left my backpack at the school. I cursed myself for being so stupid as I jogged around to the back of the house. I climbed the tree in our backyard and climbed onto the roof. This is how Vince used to come up to my to my room until my dad yelled at me once and said Vince could just use the darn front door like a normal person, except he hadn't said darn. Even still, I always left my window open in case Vince needed to drop by unexpectedly in the middle of the night or something. I crawled across the roof to my bedroom window and noticed right away that it was ajar about an inch. My heart sank. No, no, he wouldn't do that. I opened the window and climbed through it. My shoes felt like they were made of lead. I could barely walk, and I almost fell once I was actually inside my room. I opened my closet and knelt next to the false wood panel. I popped it off, set it aside, and reached into the hole. There was nothing. I reached up and down and all around, but all I felt was dusty installation and particle board. My heart caught in my throat and I couldn't swallow. I scrambled up to my desk and took a flashlight from the top drawer. I went back to the cubby hole in my closet and got down on my stomach. I shined the light inside. I made a pass over every corner and space that I could find, but all I saw was dust that moved in the flashlight yellow beam. There was no mistake about it. The emergency fund and the game fund had been stolen. Around $6,000 was just gone as if it had never even existed. I resisted the urge to puke. The Cub games, our business, our money, everything I worked so hard for my whole life was gone in the blink of an eye, and it was probably my best friend who had done it. I got up and ran to the bathroom where I puked out my cinnamon toast crunch, my guts, and I think my heart from the feel of it. I crawled across the roof to my bedroom window and noticed, whoops, I still didn't want to believe it. I felt like someone had just burned down my house with my family still inside, and now the arsonist was laughing at me and making snow angels in the ashes. During the bike ride back to school, I went over it all again. Sure, I had missed some key detail that would prove I was crazy, and I had imagined it all. But it always came back to the same end result. Staples had paid off Vince, and Vince had stolen our funds. That's what their meeting had been about this morning. I was sure of it. I explained why Vince it explained why Vince had been acting so weird lately. That's also why Vince had not gone to school today, so he could sneak into my room and steal my money. He was the only person who knew where it was hidden besides Fred and Joe, and they had both been at school all day, and the money had been there. The money had been there when I'd left that morning. I knew because I checked. I always do. It's a morning ritual for me. Vince also had had plenty of practice climbing into my bedroom through the unlocked window. I knew I would have to confront Vince about it all at some point. Or maybe I would order a hit on him, a hit on my own best friend. I didn't really like the thought of either of those options. But then I realized that it didn't matter. As I arrived back at school, the truth really set in. My empire had officially crumbled. I had nothing left at all. All my money was gone. Joe would probably abandon me once he found out. The bullies wouldn't work for me for free. I had no way to pay Tyrrell what I owed him. What was left in Tom Petty cash would barely be enough, nearly enough, wouldn't be nearly enough. And it was Vince, my supposed best friend in the whole world and business manager, who had taken me down. So I didn't even have anyone to brainstorm with or talk to. I was alone and my business was all but gone. Staples had been right. He had dismantled my whole life and I never saw it coming. And that's why he knew he'd be successful because he had my right hand man in his back pocket the entire time. I had been doomed from the start. I could still hardly believe it. The whole thing hurt much worse than the beating PJ and the high schoolers had laid on me a few days before. It hurt on a whole different level. That had been just a pinprick compared to this. As I trudged back to class, I couldn't help but wonder, maybe I should have just gone to work for Staples. Then Vince and I would still be friends and business partners. We'd still probably be going to the Cubs game. People like Staples never seemed to have these problems. Maybe that was the answer after all. I tried to pay attention in class that day, but it was no use. I didn't really listen to Mr. Scary talking about compound factoids or whatever he was babbling on about, and I definitely didn't write down the assignment or care in the least about trying to work on it. All I could think about was Vince and our business and how it used to be way back in the trailer park sandbox. Those days had never seemed so far away. But maybe this was partially my fault. Why else would my best friend betray me like this? Vince had finally fessed up to stealing money, and it had been because his family was so in desperate need. And sure, I'd forgiven him, but what else had I done? Nothing. I could have offered him some more money, but I didn't. And Staples clearly had. And that had been the difference. Staples had offered Vince what I needed more than anything, and I didn't. What he needed more than anything, and I didn't. Had I really driven Vince to this in some way? At afternoon recess, I met with Joe, Kitten, Great White, Nubby, and Fred. The mood was somber, and I think they could tell that something was wrong. It was time to tell them that I'd found the traitor. I wasn't going to say exactly who it was yet because I thought I should deal with Vince personally first. He was my former best friend, and it was that friendship that had blinded me from the double cross. My belief in my friend had doomed us all. It was my responsibility to deal with Vince, not theirs. So I decided to not tell them just yet about my lack of funds either. The longer I could keep them on my side, the better. Though I would obviously have to come clean at some point. I think I found our rat, I said. Who is it? I'll kick his bloody arse, Great White said. If you all meet me here tomorrow morning, I'll discuss it then. I just want to let you all know that we can stop being suspicious of each other, and you should all take the rest of the day off. Go be kids, have fun. I'll see you all here tomorrow morning at recess. And Joe? I added as they filed out. Yeah, Mac? Make sure you stick pretty close to Fred. Staples may still be gunning for him. Okay, sure. I watched Fred and Joe exit together. They looked like a pretty funny pair. I would have laughed had the circumstances been different. I sat inside my office, not even bothering to lock the bathroom door. Why should I care anymore? My customers had all pretty much given up on my business. Hardly anybody lined up outside the bathroom anymore, even when my office was open. I thought word had started to spread about what Staples was doing to me. The assault outside the shed, my inability to protect my hired bullies. I was losing my cred. But who cared about that stuff? I had no partner anymore, no best friend, and I had no money because a greedy former best friend had stolen it. After a few minutes, I buried my face in my hands and tried not to think up too much about Vince. My stomach and chest hurt like I'd just drunk a huge bottle of acid. The bike ride to Vince's house after school was hard, and it took forever, even though it was just under a few minutes or so. Most likely, most likely, it was because I really didn't want to have to face Vince, not after everything that had happened. It seemed like I was never going to make it, but eventually I rounded the corner onto his block. I parked my bike and walked down the leaf littered path up to Vince's trailer. My stomach churned in anticipation as I knocked on the door. I still had no idea what even to say to him. This was not, this was There was so much going on inside my head that I didn't even notice that Vince's mom had answered. Christian, dear, are you okay? She said loudly. Oh, sorry, I was just thinking. I thought you had a heart heat stroke. Get in here, she demanded, and stepped aside for me. I noticed that she was wearing sweatpants and a sweatshirt that looked as if she hadn't showered in days. Vince's mom was such a riot. She usually made me laugh. Not today, though. Nothing can make me laugh today. Portrayal can do that to a person. Vince is in his room. He's not feeling well today, she said with a smile. Thanks, I said, and went down the hall towards his room. Not feeling well because stabbing his best friend in the back made him feel horrible? Probably not. He probably just ate too much during his celebration lunch with Staples. My forced smile quickly faded as I approached Vince's door. It was closed, and as if I don't know and his "If I don't know why you're here, then why are you here" sign was hanging on the outside. I remember giving that I remember giving him that sign for his ninth birthday. I walked up to the door, took a breath, tried to clear my mind, and knocked. "Come in," came Vince's voice. I opened the door and stepped inside. He smiled like nothing was wrong. "What's up, Mac?" he said. "Vince, we need to talk." I closed the door behind me. He sat in his bed wearing sweatpants and a t-shirt. His hair was sticking up everywhere as if he hadn't left the trailer at all today, but I knew better. "Anything you want to tell me?" I asked. He narrowed his eyes and then smiled. Yeah, I guess about not making the school today. I didn't mean to call you, but it was what?" I interrupted. "Too hard to face your best friend after stabbing him in the back?" "Huh?" Vince said. "What are you talking about?" "Staples. I saw pictures, Vince. You can't deny it. You met with Staples this morning." "Staples? Mac, I don't know what you're—" Vince started, then stopped. His eyes glazed over with a sudden realization that he'd been caught. When he spoke again, his voice was weaker, as if he could barely get the words out. "Staples, I should have known." "Yeah, you should have known that I'd find out. How could I not?" "We're supposed to be partners," I said. "Best friends." "We are partners, Mac, business partners and friends who spy on each other, apparently. So I guess that means that you had Tyrrell follow me then. Me?" Vince jabbed his finger across his chest. He had no right to be angry with me, a fact that was only pissing me off more than I already was. "Yeah, well, it wasn't such a bad move after all, was it?" I said. "No, where's my money?" I walked over to his closet and started to open it. Vince pushed me out of the way and I stumbled, catching myself in his dresser and almost knocked it over. "I told you I gave it to my mom," he said. "Why do you still have to be so greedy all the time? You already have everything. Sometimes things are more important than your funds. We didn't start this business to get rich, remember? It was to help kids. Me? Greedy me? You're the one who took it all. You stole $6,000 and you're calling me greedy? Gave it to your mom? Pfft, you're lying about that. You lied about the whole thing, didn't you? I bet your mom didn't even lose her job. Did she? I bet you're just rolling in cash, laughing at me right now, are you?" Vince opened his mouth and shook his head. It looked like he was trying to say something, but he just made a small croaking noise. "Are you happy now?" I asked. Vince shook his head. We looked at each other for a moment. "Now where is it?" I threw open his dresser drawer, fighting tears. "I can't believe you'd throw away the Cubs game just like that. Or did you ever really like the Cubs? Are you just a phony like all the others? You pretend to be poor and you pretend to like the Cubs, and all for what? You stab your best friend in the back while hiding behind jokes? You're not even that funny, but you're a coward and a good liar, I'll give you that." "Get out," Vince said. He said it quietly and calmly, but in a way that I'd never heard Vince talk before. His voice was tight like a wild dog on a short leash. "Get out right now," he repeated. "Not without my money," I said. "Get out or I'll make you," he said, and shoved me in the chest so hard that I crashed into his bedroom wall and made the whole trailer wobble slightly. His face was blank, as if emotion would never really existed in it at all, and it probably hadn't. No one with real feelings or an actual heart could do what he had done. I realized that all the time I'd been there in his room after that afternoon, he barely even made an attempt to deny any of the accusations. He really had betrayed me. I felt tears burning at my eyes, but not from my sore head where it slammed into his wall. That barely hurt at all compared to what else I was feeling. In fact, the lump on the side of my head felt like a day at the carnival complete with cotton candy and funnel cakes just then. I got up and left, making sure to nudge Vince extra hard with my shoulder on the way out. His mom gave me a concerned look as I walked past her to the kitchen. I heard her start to ask me something, but it was too late. I was already out the door and on my bike before she got past the second word. The next morning, I revealed the news to Joe, Fred, and the bullies. I told them that Vince was a rat, that he had stolen the emergency and game funds, which meant I was out of money and officially closing up business. "I'm sorry I can't pay you what I owe," I said, and then solemnly and sincerely, "I've got nothing left." They reacted surprisingly well, especially Great White. Then they said stuff like, "It's okay, Mac, and I'm sorry it went down like this." "Yeah, Mac, this all really stinks. Are you going to be okay?" Joe asked. "Yeah, I'll be fine. Now you guys just go on and do whatever you got to do. I'm going to stay here a while and try to get some of my stuff cleaned up," I said. They all said goodbye and left, except for Fred. "Is it okay if I stay, Mac?" he said. "Yeah, sure, whatever you want," I said. "Thanks, Mac." "Mac?" "Yeah," I said, looking down at his face. His eyes were brimming with tears that should have been mirroring my own. But ever since yesterday, I hadn't cried a drop. I'd have thought finding out that my best friend betrayed me in the worst way imaginable would make me cry like a girl on Valentine's Day. But if it was, but it was as if was too broken inside to cry anymore. I just felt nothing. Even thinking of the Cubs making the World Series for the first time in almost 70 years felt meaningless, like a cracked, dead leaf lying on the pavement. I'm really sorry about this. It's all my fault, Fred sobbed. I assured him that it had been bound to happen sooner or later, with Staples moving into my school. I apologized to him for failing to protect him and take down Staples like I said I was going to. Eventually, he stopped crying. I told Fred he was welcome to hang out here for the next few days if he still wanted to. I went into my office, then paged through my books. I wasn't looking for anything in particular. I was mostly just thinking about the good old days when my best friend was also an evil, heartless jerk intent on destroying my life.